everybody. Welcome to today's Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report. I'm your host, Amy Zewe, and today joining us as a special co-host is our president, Shelley Neese, author of the Copper Scroll Project, as well as author of the Bible Fiber book and our weekly podcaster for Bible Fiber. And our guest of the week is Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, who you may remember joined us about a year or two ago when he had a book out about the red heifer. Today, he's going to talk to us about the Qumran Project and a special book that he just released. Eliyahu is an author and he is a journalist with Israel 365. I encourage you to follow that site as there's a ton of great news there. And Eliyahu, we're so excited to hear about this latest release, your latest publication. And Shelley's here to join us because this topic is also something she has some great expertise on as an archaeologist and as the author of the Copper Scroll Project book, released about 10 years ago, but it's all related. So Eliyahu, welcome to the program. Just remind our audience about your background, if you can give us the quick elevator snapshot, and then let's talk about this book that's just released and how folks can get a hold of it. And we have some particular questions we'd like to go over.
Okay, I was living a normal life, New Jersey suburb, until I fell down the rabbit hole at the age of 30 in 1991, and ended up in a religious kibbutz and started being Israeli. And I did the IDF as a combat medic and learned in yeshiva for too long, got married, had 4 kids. And now we live in the Golan. We used to live in Bad Ayin, English. Now we live in the Golan. And I got a job writing. I've been writing for Israel 365 News for about 13 years. I have about 6,000 articles.
Wow.
I just finished my 5th book. 3 of them are fiction, 2 are nonfiction. And and that's me in a nutshell. So.
Well, that's great. So you have the latest release you've written 2 books that are nonfiction. Oh, you talked with us on the program about the book about the red heifer, and this next one is about the incense. And I want you to kind of explain the title of the book, what the words mean, and how it's intricate into Jewish tradition, and why Christians need to know about it. Because I do get a lot of questions about the third temple and the red heifer. And honestly, I refer everybody to you. I tell them to go to find you on Facebook, find your publications. But we just really need to unpack this because Christians hear a lot of gobbledygook about the idea of the third temple. And Shelley and I both agree that you are the greatest source for finding the data that's out there, vetting it, and explaining it to us.
Mm-hmm. I think you're being very gracious to me. That's I wouldn't necessarily describe myself that way. Maybe I'm really good at translating really smart people for the normal public. That might be my.
Or Amy and I are very good at punting the questions.
Okay. What the book is actually about, and you ask a very important question. How does the third temple relate for Christians? And I have to say, in my experience, after I started writing about the red heifer, and after the red heifers arrived in Israel, there are 2 types of Christian responses I get. I get responses from very knowledgeable, well-versed Christians who are steeped in all of the Christian theology and the Christian literature, and then I get the others. And I hear a lot about the temple of the Antichrist and all that, and then the knowledgeable Christians are like, oh no, that has nothing to do with the Jewish temple. The Jewish temple is the opposite of the temple of the Antichrist. So rather than try to answer it as a Jew for Christians, I'd rather say to Christians, if you have any objections to the third Jewish temple, first of all, it's explicit prophecy that there will be a third temple, and everything about the temple, the first and second temples, is pretty much written in this book we call the Bible. And if you have any questions, please go speak to a Christian theologian. I've never heard a knowledgeable Christian theologian object to the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Even more so the opposite. Jesus spent a lot of time in the temple. And even after he left the world, his disciples continued in the temple. It's a very Christian thing. And the third temple is going to be a house of prayer for all nations. It's not going to be, people think the temple is a synagogue with a barbecue pit attached, and that's very much not the case. First of all, one of the interesting things I found about the red heifer is absolutely not an offering. I prefer the word offering to sacrifice. It's much closer to the Hebrew korban, which means something that brings you closer. So it's an offering. The red heifer is done outside of the temple, on the Mount of Olives, and it's not burned as an offering. It's more like we need to burn the cow to get the ashes in order to purify us, in order to serve the temple. So it's not really an offering. And there's a difference, and it's very important to note the difference between impurity and sin. A person can be impure but totally free of sin, and a person can be free of sin and be impure. They're two totally separate topics. And the Ketoret, which is the Hebrew word for incense, has nothing to do with either. The Ketoret was burned on the golden altar, which was right in front of the separation. In the first temple, it was a wall, a double wall. In the second temple, it was a parochet, it was a curtain. The golden altar was in front of that, and the tabernacle was also in front of the curtain. And it was burned every day. And even more so on the holidays and on Yom Kippur. And what's very interesting is if you look at a diagram of the temple, the animal offerings never went, or very rarely, only on Yom Kippur did you spring some of the blood inside, but the animal offerings were always on the outside. They were almost like, if you're coming, you might as well bring a snack. But the golden altar was actually geographically in the very center of the Heichal, of the sanctuary. And the incense offering was central itself to the temple service. It was so dear that they had a special procedure for choosing which Kohen brought the incense, because he could only do it once in his life, because everyone wanted to do it so much. It was that important. And the last couple hundred years of the Second Temple, the Holy of Holies, there was no Ark of the Covenant in it. So basically on Yom Kippur, which was the only time that the high priest went into the Holy of Holies, he didn't go into the Ark of the Covenant. He went into a room full of incense smoke. The incense itself was probably the most central aspect to the whole temple service. So that's why I think Christians should be very interested in it. They're going to be at a house of prayer for all nations. And even though, and if they're not there, then, well, I can't be there. And even though it was central and it never went outside of the actual sanctuary, the smell of the incense, according to the Midrash, went all the way down to Jericho. So the smell was always there. It was a central part of the temple, which is why the incense was so important. And it's actually explicit. Well, not exactly true, but I'll get to that in a minute. But what this book is about is it's about the Ketoret, but what it focuses on is we try to accurately bring the story of how Vendyl Jones came to Israel and discovered what we believe is 300 kilograms of temple incense. What happened was Vendyl Jones was a Texas pastor who started asking questions and wasn't getting the answers that he liked from his teachers and from the church. So he decided, well, the rabbis talk about this a lot. Let me go check with the rabbis. So he came to Israel to learn with the rabbis, and he came here and he started working on a dig that was actually at the time it was in Qumran, and that was Jordan at the time. And then the 1967 war broke out, and Vendyl volunteered for the IDF. There's a story that he was colorblind, and it made him able to see through camouflage. So he was a very effective spotter for the IDF in 1967. Yeah, it's crazy stories about Vendyl. He was a very, very special guy.
And
And
the more you read about him, the more I feel like I don't think he would have gotten answers he liked from anybody, rabbis or pastors or anyone.
you know something? I'd like to know more about the guy. First of all, it turns out that I've got this buddy who I knew when I lived in Bat Ayin, who then moved to Katrine, and we worked together in telemarketing in Jerusalem. And I've known this guy for about 20 years. And it turns out that when I started writing about Vendyl, he's my grandfather.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, I mean, you know me, I would rather hide out on my mountaintop and invite people over for coffee and never leave my house. But Hashem really put me in a place that he's like, you got no choice. You got to do this. And I'm like, but. He's like, no, you got to do it. So I've been friends with this young man for 20 years, and he's Vendyl Jones's grandson. And the more I learn about him, the more I realize he was a Texan. He was a good old boy, knew how to get into fistfights, and he loved his Bible, and he was a very, very smart guy and dedicated all of his life and energy to serving God, connecting to Israel, and bringing the temple. So after the war, he started digging in Qumran and working on the Copper Scroll, which is where you come in, Shelley. And the Copper Scroll, it's worth studying because no one really understands it. It's in a very unusual form of Hebrew. It's a Dead Sea Scroll technically, but it's actually etched into copper. And it's kind of like weird Hebrew symbols, not so easy to understand. And Vendyl had a particular understanding of it, and he kind of deciphered a part of it, and it pointed to a double cave. And he had just spent 10 years just walking around the area. He said, I think I know where that double cave is. And he found the hidden cave by accident.
Did he think that the Copper Scroll pointed to the incense? I can't remember if that was in his specific translation
did.
of Copper Scroll.
Yes, he did. That Copper Scroll, it's in Jordan, in Amman, Jordan. And I'm so glad I'd love to talk to you about this, Shelley. If next time you come to Israel, that Copper Scroll was, Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, made it in order to bring the third temple. He said, stuff is going to happen and we got to be ready. So let's make a roadmap. And Vendyl thinks he interpreted some of it, and he found a cave. And in the cave, he found what he called a silo, which was a prepared pit, stone lined. And it had an unusual dark brown red powder in it that was slightly aromatic, that he actually burned a little bit of it. And very unusual, it burned very well with smoke that went straight up. And it was incredibly aromatic. And he had it chemically analyzed, and discovered that it had precisely 11 organic ingredients in it.
Is it possible that if we just playing like the cynic here, would any pile of old dirt make some kind of scent if you burned it? Like,
well, first of all, there was an amazing guy, Larry Warnfield. Now I can't remember his name. Tip of the tongue, whatever I need the name. He's taking care of the red heifers, and he was actually on the dig with Vendyl. And we found what we thought was some spilled leftover dirt from Vendyl's dig, and he just took a small handful and put it in his mouth. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, it's organic. Try it. And I did, and it dissolved in my mouth. It was not dirt.
Okay.
It was not dirt. It was totally organic. And very finely ground. If you shake it, it like misted. It was unbelievable. But they had it chemically analyzed, and it had 11 ingredients. And next to it were channels in the rock where they found 3 other ingredients that were inorganic.
Oh.
Which in the Bible, in the Torah, they mention 4 organic ingredients that are used in the incense. And in the Talmud, they list 11 ingredients and then 3 inorganic ingredients. Now, I understand a lot of people say, oh, it's the Talmud. What did they know? When the Talmud was written down, they were still burning incense, and it had been burned for, I think it was 1,300 years already. So they knew what they were talking about. And Vendyl had found 300 kilograms. There's a dispute whether it was 300 or 600. It seems pretty clear it was 300, though we don't know for sure. And it was chemically analyzed by Rabbi Professor Marvin Anselman, who was a brilliant rabbi, not just your average run-of-the-mill rabbi. He was a brilliant rabbi, and he was a brilliant chemist who wrote encyclopedias for chemists that are still being used today. He has hundreds of patents to his name. He passed away. And I saw an interview that he did soon after it was found with CNN, and the CNN person asks him, so in layman's terms, what do we have here? And this brilliant scientist said, in no uncertain terms, I am certain that this is the temple incense. When he said that, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my goodness, he wouldn't say this unless he really was certain. He said, but in order to convince other scientists, we need to do further testing, which is what Project Qumran, Expedition Qumran is trying to do right now. And so they took the problem was they took the 300 kilograms, and there was a kind of broken communications with the Israel Antiquities Authority, and they did not take responsibility for it. And it passed from one person to another person to another person, and it eventually ended up under the auspices of Sarah Richardson, who was Vendyl Jones's daughter and my friend's stepmom. And she put it in a bomb shelter near her house because it was holy, and she was a bit intimidated. So she was very
much of this
careful.
story is, I love it. Like,
oh,
I had to write a book about it. Like, only in Israel would 3,000-year-old possible temple incense be stored in a modern bomb shelter.
It gets much crazier.
By Christians who, I mean, the whole story is just, this is a weird story.
I want to point out, I should have specified that at one point very early on, Vendyl stopped self-defining as a Christian, and he became a Noahide. And there were many, many Noahides involved in the project. As a matter of fact, they had a slogan, Emet min haaretz titzmach, truth will spring from the earth, which explained their archaeology and also explained their theology for a bit. So Sarah stored it 300 kilograms. It was in cardboard boxes in plastic bags in this bomb shelter in her house in Samaria, in Qumran, in a town called Malay Lavona. Lavona is the galbanum. It's one of the ingredients of the incense. It was there for over 30 years. And just before the war, she was hiking in the hills near her house, and she fell down, broke her hip, and was incapacitated, was in a wheelchair. So she couldn't keep an eye on it. And then when the war broke out, the community had to clear out the bomb shelters for use as bomb shelters. So 300 kilograms of 2,000-year-old temple incense got thrown away into the garbage.
That's just crazy.
And then last summer, My friend Will approached me. He said, my mother passed away. And I said, so what about the incense? And he said, we'll talk about it. And a couple of weeks after that, he said, you read the news a lot. You're going to find out. My mother didn't pass away. She was murdered. She was murdered by her own son. Very tragic story I'd really rather not go into.
Sure.
I mean, I give her so much credit for she protected Christ. She was protecting something holy. It's not, anytime you deal with holiness, it's very dangerous. Look what happened to Nadav and Avihu when they went in. Strange fire. It was probably the incense. The Torah says explicitly, if you make it and you just burn it or you change it, even if you just burn it for no reason outside of the temple, you're going to die. And Vendyl actually went to the chief Sephardi rabbi, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef? Yeah, it was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. And he asked him, he said, for purposes of science, we need to burn this. And he had given a sample to Dr. Terry Hutter, who is not Jewish, and he was a palynologist, which basically checks organic matter. He was able to analyze the sample and determine precisely which varieties of plants were in this 2,000-year-old sample. And they precisely correlated to the list in the Talmud about what the temple incense was. And he burned it. And he was like, for months, my laboratory smelled of this stuff. And when I burned it, everyone in the house was like, what did you burn? It was a very distinctive, pleasant smell. That was not your run-of-the-mill, buy it at the dime store incense. So that's the story of the incense. Yeah. So what we wrote about is this was a technical book. It was not a spiritual book. There was a little bit of spirituality, but what are you going to do? But the Project Qumran is actually my contact was with the son and the daughter of Rabbi Antelman, Rhonda Attar and Perry Antelman, amazing people. I learned so much from these people about so many things, not just about incense, but also about how much you can do and Hashem is expecting it from you. They really taught me that I needed to up my game and really step up, which is why I wrote a book in 9 weeks and totally blew myself out, but it was necessary. And the idea is they wanted to, first of all, see if the 300 kilograms was still around, which we're pretty certain it's not. Though if I was like, just tell me which garbage dump it's at, I'll get a hazmat suit.
Could you go to the landfill if it's in baggies? Maybe
I was ready to. I was this close, but I was like, I know small Yeshuvim. Sometimes they have landfills. Small communities sometimes have landfills next door, and people will drive it out there instead. But no, I spoke to the people, and they're like, no, that garbage can over there, that's where it went to. But when we went to the bomb shelter, there was a little air purification unit in the corner, big hunk of metal, and underneath it was an incongruous pile of red dirt, red dust. We scooped it up, and Larry put it in his mouth. He said, yep, that's what it tastes like. And I'm like, I got to do this too. And it was. So we're pretty sure that one of the bags tore open when they were cleaning it out. So we have some of that. And we also got a sample from Vendyl's widow that is right now, as we speak, getting tested. So Project Qumran is hoping to verify scientifically that what Vendyl found was indeed the temple incense. And the testing is much more advanced. The technology is much better. So there's a good chance of that.
Like, if
So that's
you
where we
could
stand.
put all of the samples in a bowl, I mean, how much are we talking
Right.
you now have of it?
Right. Since I started writing this book, people, anyone I tell about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, Vendyl gave me a little." There are little jars all over the place, little jars. A bunch of them, people are like, "I don't understand. I put it in my suitcase, and when I got there, the jar was open. I couldn't figure out why." And it's a lot of the samples went away. Also, when I went there with Will, he he said that he saw in the bomb shelter, and he's like, "No way, it was 300 kilograms." So it's out there. Um,
So
it's not the intention of Project Qumran, but if we do further testing, it seems pretty clear that if we wanted to recreate the incense, we could do that. That would be doable.
So now let's remind everybody, if we haven't done so already, the book that you produced in 9 weeks, um, which sort of catalogs the chain of command and what data is available and what information is out there, and it doesn't prescribe a conclusion. It lets people
Right. That was
understand the
intentional.
situation. But Project
That was
Qumran
intentional.
.org is a website that we can all go to, and this book that you compiled, and I think it's about 130 pages or so with all the indexes and appendixes, it's available for free, so anybody can go get it, download it, and examine your research and the timeline. And I love that it includes an explanation about like the Talmud and the Midrash, and I love the fact that it explains Exodus 30 with the initial 4 ingredients, and then you kind of get into the other 11 and where they came from. So it really walks the reader through in it is research based, but it's not overwhelming because it's not like 600 pages, where you can get an idea of what's going on. And then if we keep following the progression, whether it's Project Qumran or your additional research. So let's just remind everybody, you can go to projectqumran.org. That's the website, correct? It's a .org.
That's the website. Qumran it's spelled Project Project. Qumran Qumran.org. It's available for free download. I would recommend that people sign up for the newsletter.
Okay.
It's just your email address. Doesn't cost any money, but obviously this is ongoing research, and it's a fascinating story. And who knows? So that's and if you want to donate, this is a very expensive project actually.
Mm-hmm.
I found out how much the testing costs, and I was just like, whoa, you guys are serious. So it's also and we want to test the stuff we found in the bomb shelter as well, just to be able to verify that it was there, that it was in the bomb shelter and not anywhere else. So that's expensive, and if you want to give a little bit to bringing back the third temple, that's a good way to do it. It will be coming out in hardcover.
Okay.
Soon. We're working on that. That's another 9 weeks. it's what I wanted to talk to you about, especially Shelley. When I was researching this, we were talking about, for example, Qumran. And Qumran, when we speak about Qumran, most people talk about Essenes. And there was an amazing guy, David Ben Avraham, who was on the dig. And brilliant man. I mean, he's brilliant. And he's getting up there in age, and he said, I'm much slower than I used to be. And I'm just like, thank God, because there's no way I would have had a conversation with you when you were at your top game, because I'm lost. Okay. And he told me to look for the B'nai Tzadok. And there's a Professor Rachel Eliyahu, who's a professor, I think, of Hebrew literature and history at Hebrew U. And she went through all the resources, all the primary literature, first sources, and she said, nope, Essenes, never happened. The Essenes were not in Qumran. The Essenes never existed. What did happen in Qumran, she kind of ruined Hanukkah for me. She explained that there were different traditions, different strains of or traditions among the Kohanim, among the priests. And the primary one was the Bnei Tzadok, who connected the temple, the first and second temple, and they were there from Solomon, connected it to the Garden of Eden and the creation of the world, which makes sense because we refer to the Even HaTashtit, the foundation stone, which is the Holy of Holies, and that, according to Jewish tradition, is the seed from which all of creation began, which doesn't make sense unless you connect the temple to the creation of the world. And according to the book of Enoch, how do you Enoch? Is that how
We
you
say
pronounce it?
Enoch a lot in America.
Enoch.
Christians might hear it as Enoch.
In that book, it describes that Enoch, who was third generation, fourth generation after Adam and Eve, was permitted back into the garden to get 4 herbs. And those 4 herbs were from the garden, and they were the basis for the incense.
Wow.
So it connected the incense to the temple, to the Garden of Eden. And what happened was, and she explains it, and I'm not very good at history. I barely know what happened in my own life yesterday. But apparently there was, even before the Maccabees came along in the Hashmonaim, there was conflicts within the Jewish people over to Hellenize or not to Hellenize. And it expressed itself even through the rituals, especially the temple rituals. And it wasn't just external coming in saying, we want to turn it into a temple of this. It was also internal within the Jewish people. And in this case, the Bnei Tzadok lost. And the Hashmonaim, though they were against Hellenization, they transferred the focus of the temple, if I'm understanding Professor Eliyahu correctly, transferred the focus of the temple from the incense to the oil. Which is why, even though the incense was on the golden altar in the center, the oil is central to the Hanukkah, the victory over the Seleucids, and even the name, the Hashmonaim, means the oily guys. And we make a big deal in Hanukkah about the oil, and it's like, so they made the oil impure. Why didn't they make the incense impure as well, or burn it? Because the Hashmonaim, to the victors go the history books. They rewrote the history books and said, no, the real focus of the temple is the oil. And yes, the oil is important. The menorah was the menorah, but the real focus of the temple service was the incense. So what happened was, when the Hashmonaim took over, the Bnei Tzadok had to run away. And they ran to a remote place, Qumran. And there you had, it wasn't, God forbid, celibate priests or anything like that. They were Kohanim. And Kohanim are very scrupulous about purity. So they did a lot of mikvahs, a lot of ritual bathing. And they also were teachers, and they were protecting their tradition. So that's where you get the Dead Sea Scrolls from. That's why they were very into scribal work, maintaining the tradition. And they were sure that the temple was going to come back. So they hid a lot of the temple implements. Why you have Vendyl found anointing oil or cinnamon oil in Qumran? The Copper Scroll lists a lot of temple objects. Why were they in Qumran and not Jerusalem? Because they were saying, look, this temple that is not based around the Ketoret and based on our Bnei Tzadok tradition cannot last. So we're going to bide our time until the new temple arises, and when it arises, we're ready. We got everything we need. And that's why there were 300 kilograms, which was exactly one batch of incense. That's why it was in Qumran. I also want to emphasize, when you talk about the temple, another reason why Christians should be very into the temple is, I can't emphasize enough, I'm learning more and more about the temple. It was such a universal thing. It was not a synagogue with a barbecue pit. The Bnei Tzadok had the tradition that the temple, there was a lower temple and an upper temple. And the two were integrally connected. They were one. And when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, the temple up above was destroyed. And until we recreate the temple, there will not be an upper temple. And the Bnei Tzadok were very into this. We have to, it's one, it's Chad Milta, it's one reality, the upper and lower reality. We serve God because God is everything, and that's us, and that's the temple. And when you go into the Holy of Holies, you are there, you are in that one reality, the pre-creative one reality. And if we object to bringing third temple, then you are standing in the way of creating an upper temple. And you're saying that a lower temple is more important, that we don't need a lower temple. We decide what reality is. So the Bnei Tzadok had that tradition of an upper and lower temple being like one entity. And that's what they were that's what they were waiting to bring back. And tragically, it didn't happen yet. But
yet being the operative word, right? So.
Oh, yet being the operative word in my life. I mean, that's where we're headed, you know?
Well, I do think Christians, we have kind of a low church and a high church tradition. Low church Christians don't think about incense. It's not a part of our worship style. It's not a part of the service. And then high church Christians, if you're in an Anglican or a Catholic service, and
even an Orthodox Christian
yes, they walk the perimeter of the sanctuary with incense, because we worship God with all of our being. Worship of God is a kinetic experience. It's not a visual experience because we're anti-cultic, just like the Jewish people, but it is, a sensory experience. And I think God created us that way, to worship him with our whole beings. And so it makes sense to me that incense is a part of that from a high church tradition.
I'm so glad you said that, Shelley. And I was really looking forward to being able to talk about this with you, because like I said in the beginning, I just hear all day about, oh no, it's the temple of the Antichrist, and Jesus was there. Okay, but we're talking about way more than that.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, changing all of reality for all of humankind to connect with the high church, with the upper reality, to bring into our existence a reality that mirrors, if not is the other half of a divine reality that we're living in. And I've never met an educated, devout Christian who objected to that. Mm-hmm. They long for this. And I don't know, I know so many Christians, God bless them, but very few of them are what I would call mainstream Christians. And I don't know anyone who's more of a mainstream Christian than you are, Shelley. You're one of the very few mainstream Christians I know. And I was hoping that you would go there too, that you would be there, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, something where it's a universal reality of our lower reality, which we can only perceive parts of it. We get glimpses of the truth, which are part of a much larger universal divine reality, with the upper and the lower co-joined. And that's what the incense is all about. It's going back to Eden and connecting. And even though it looks like ritual, there's the ritual hides the much deeper action. Burning the incense, it's like it could be just any smell, but no, it has to be this precise smell that connects us to Eden. And that's what we're talking about.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as you were explaining all this, and I read through the book, I keep coming back to the fact that Eden, it was where, before the fall, where God dwelt with
Right.
Adam and Eve. And then, as you mentioned,
No. We lived
dwelt.
in the Garden of Eden. We lived in the Garden of Eden. We were subletting.
Okay. But it was the dwelling place. It was the dwelling place.
No, God lived in Eden. We
That's
lived
right.
in the garden.
God. Yes. And then
which is in Hebrew, garden is gan. Gan is also kindergarten. So we were kept in the nursery. Okay?
We were kept in the nursery. But there was a connectedness, right? And then, as you mentioned, the discovery or the interpretation from the rabbi that Enoch got to go and get the 4 plants, and that's part of the incense. And the Holy of Holies was where the Spirit of God tabernacled or could dwell. And it's the idea of redemption and restoration, right? So that it connects everything back to the restoration of Eden. And I mean, I'm just sort of interpreting it all, and I want to make sure that Christians have a spark of curiosity to go to the website, to participate, to get the emails, to donate, to download your book, and really get behind the facts, and the facts as they're known right now, and also avoid the misconceptions, because there is a lot of not correct interpretations and theories in the Christian community that we need to be armed against and be aware of, at least. So, and you mentioned that it's not a definitive, the research doesn't present a conclusion that you're prescribing. It instead is this roadmap to what we know so far, what we can interpret, or be careful to leave room open to interpret as more discoveries and testings. Are you at all concerned about the samples that are being used for testing? Is there any concern about?
No, but I had a very unpleasant experience with the red heifers. I was at the airport when the red heifers landed. I've visited them frequently. I've been a part of the ongoing reporting. And I have to say that I kind of regret it, because some horrible things came out of it. And I don't say that like it's very painful. Here we were waiting for and searching for the red heifer, and then it turned into something entirely different that wasn't exactly very good. I'm terrified. The appendixes, normally, who reads the appendix? But it has within it Professor Terry Hutter's entire report, in which he lists the Latin names of the varieties of the plants. He has pictures of the varieties of the plants. You could very easily recreate the incense using his report. And I was terrified that someone would try, because that's forbidden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Nadav and Avihu. I could see that happening, and it would be horrible. So I am terrified. The closer you get to holiness, the more dicey things get. I'll be really honest. I speak to a lot. There's this thing there are Christians who are connecting more and more to Judaism and Hebrew roots. And there's this habit of writing out YHWH. And anyone who deals with Jews know we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We say Hashem. Why? Because of the 3rd commandment, not to take God's name in vain. And they say, "Oh no, I'm commanded to call out to God in His name." No, the Kohanim, that verse that you say call out to God in His name, is when the Kohanim are purified, wearing the ritual garments in the temple, and only at specific times.
You got to be careful. We all have to be careful.
Exactly. The problem with a little bit of knowledge is if you don't know anything, you can't do anything. But if you have a little bit of knowledge, then it's like when your kid finally figures out where you keep your car keys and how to put them in the ignition and turn the ignition, then you're in deep trouble. You know, if he's just playing in the garden, not a problem. But we're in a very special age. 13 years ago, when I started writing these articles about prophecy, everyone said I was crazy, I'm silly, this is always that. No one has been saying that since COVID. Everyone knows it's happening. It's getting real. And some people are like, oh, no, we can't let that happen. We've got to wipe Israel off the map because Israel is blah, 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 you know? Or they're realizing it's happening. And the one thing I learned about prophecy is it's all written out. You know what's going to happen, but you only think you know what's going to happen because when it does happen, you probably won't see it, even when it happens right in front of you.
Because you didn't know it was going to happen that way, or you couldn't figure,
Right.
it's going to be fulfilled, but
first of all, you have to have the eyes and the heart to see it.
exactly.
But I mean, my grandfather grew up as a kid in a world with no Israel. My father grew up in a world without Jerusalem. My kids grew up in a world without the temple. I think my grandchildren, if I should be blessed, I think they're going to look at me and say, Saba, what's it like staying home and not going to bring your Passover lamb? I think we're headed there. I mean, we have Israel, we have Jerusalem, we have red heifers, we have incense. We have, if I told you, if Netanyahu turned around and said, okay, guys, start the temple service, 3 hours. It would take 3 hours. We have everything we need to start it right now. Everything. We have the priests. We have the priestly garments. They've been trained. We have everything we need. We're that close.
It's amazing. And what I love, Eliyahu, is how you look at prophecy with an excitement and a hope. A lot of Christians get a little bit in a fear mode. And it's
right.
And that's what I love about how listening and reading when you explain things, it's with an excitement and an optimism. It's with a reverence, a fear in terms of reverence, but not a scared. I'm scared. Wring my hands. Let me stop it.
That's I learned that from Jewish tradition. Christians and Jews learned prophecy very different.
Yep.
Christians, they read the prophecy, say this is what's going to happen, and Jews say, we can bargain it. We can talk about it. Okay, like Abraham. That's the difference between Abraham and Noah. Noah, God said, I'm going to destroy the world. And Noah said, okay. And God said to Abraham, I'm going to destroy those 2 towns of sinners. And Abraham's like, no, we got to talk.
A negotiation.
So we have a tradition in the Talmud that anytime there's a good prophecy, a positive prophecy, then it's absolutely going to happen. It's kind of like a little kid when he's in the candy store with his father, and his father says, no candy for you. And the kid says a blessing over the candy. Well, the father's like, now I got to do it. I got to give him the candy. Okay. But when it comes to the scary prophecies, it's time to bargain. We got to talk. And that's where the mitzvahs come in. If we have the merit, we can soften the judgment a little. I've spoken to a lot of mystical rabbis who've said that Israel definitely deserves a break.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Faithful for 2,000 years, and gone through since the Holocaust and since October 7th. God is saying, look, okay, we went through the hard stuff. Now it's time for softening a little bit.
That's beautiful. I want to remind everybody to go to projectqumran.org. We'll put that website in our show notes. We'll also splash it on the screen. Get the download of the book. Don't spend too much time in the index and try to recreate recipes. And follow Eliyahu Berkowitz on Israel 365 News. Sign up for those newsletters and emails because the entire suite of news reporting is excellent and informative and not what you get in legacy media.
And check out my books on Amazon. Adam Eliyahu
Yes,
Berkowitz
all the books on Amazon. Exactly. 2 nonfiction and 5 fiction. 3 fiction.
No, two nonfiction and 3 fiction. And sometimes I have difficulty telling the difference between the two, but
But they are great reads. You have an excellent.
you gotta love a good story.
That's right. A storytelling voice that certainly is a page turner for your book. Shelley, thank you so much for joining us. And you keep up your good work with Bible Fiber and your digs. And hopefully we'll all do the next interview in person in your living room. That would be great, right?
Oh yeah. Decent coffee. I can promise you that.
Thank you so much for your time, and Shavua Tov.
Really a pleasure. Really a pleasure.
Thank you.
If you enjoy these conversations, please visit us at www.thejerusalemconnection.us. Find all our podcasts on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast program. Follow us on social media, subscribe, like, and share our content to reach the broadest audience.